Hi, everyone. Welcome to Crafting a Winning Personal Statement and Resume CV for Graduate Studies in the Natural Sciences. My name is Martha Manriquez, and I am the Administrative Support Coordinator for the CSUB's Graduate Student Center. I'm pleased to introduce Dr. Amber Stokes, Associate Professor of Biology and Director of CSUB's Masters of Science in Biology program. Thank you for joining us today, Dr. Stokes. Please say hello.
Hello, thanks, Martha. I have some hopefully good advice on how to write your CV, which is kind of a type of resume more commonly used in academia, and then also a cover letter. So we're going to start by talking about the CV. So first, what is a CV? As I mentioned, it's kind of like a resume. But really what it's doing is it's a summary of your education, qualifications, and career. So CV, curriculum vitae, is Latin for course of life. And it's covering all of these things, but you want to be brief. So that's a lot of information, but you want to try to fit it in as few of pages as possible. The longer you do the job, the longer your CV gets, of course, but you want to try to kind of be as concise as you possibly can. The things that should be included in a CV, first you want to include your education history. What degrees do you have, for example? Where are your degrees from? What was your GPA? All of those things are really important to include just so people have a really brief, they'll probably ask you for transcripts as well. This gives them kind of a brief overview of your educational history. So next you want to discuss your coursework that you've taken. What kind of courses have you taken that might be relevant to the program that you're in or applying to be in? For example, if you were wanting to enter into an ecology program, then you might want to highlight some ecology courses that you've taken. So you want to try to, don't list every single course. On some level, if you're going to grad school for biology, all of your biology courses are relevant, or chemistry, or whatever the case may be. But you want to try to highlight courses that are going to be kind of more specifically relevant to your particular course or field. So next you want to include research. If you have any publications, of course, you want a list of those publications. Don't worry, don't be alarmed if you don't have any publications. Most of us, including myself, did not have any publications before I went to graduate school. Even without a publication, if you conducted research in a professor's lab, you'll want to highlight that. Or even if you did research maybe at a hospital or some other institution, you want to include that along with some basic information. Who did you work with? A short description of the research project, and really short, just a couple of sentences really. If you didn't do research, then you might include information about a relevant course project. So again, if you were going into an ecology program, you might want to talk about the project that you did in Dr. Stokes's chemical ecology class or something along those lines, right? Some sort of scientific research that you've done will help them know that you at least understand the basics of the scientific method and process. And again, include some information. What was the project that you did? What were your basic findings? And of course, tell them what course that came from. Next, you'll want to include information about any fellowships, scholarships, grants, etc. that you got. So any kind of funding that is helping you pay for your schooling or even pay for things like applications or travel to a conference or any of those types of things. GRE funding, if you receive that, application fee funding, those types of things. Those are all kind of things that you might want to highlight. Not loans. We're not talking about highlighting loans. So things that you applied for kind of separately that were awarded to you are nice to highlight as well. Teaching experience, this could be a variety of types. No one is expecting that you'll go to graduate school and be like a, professional teacher or that you have a ton of research experience, but were you a teaching assistant? Were you a supplemental instructor? Or did you do any tutoring? Those types of things are all relevant as well. And so in those cases, you want to explain the subject, the basic tasks and responsibilities, kind of just overall what you were doing. You'll also want to include some about your job history. This could be actual jobs that you've worked and gotten paid to do those types of things, but also internships, fellowships, volunteer work, all of those types of things. So where did you work? Again, what were your tasks and responsibilities, and how long there did you work? If you're working at Starbucks or something, maybe you don't include that. Maybe you do. It does show that you've had some responsibility in terms of a job, especially things that are kind of relevant to the field that you're going in. You definitely want those on your CV. Also, any presentations that you've done. If you've done presentations in a class, if you've done presentations at your job or internship or whatever the case may be, or even if you've gone to any conferences and presented your research or something along those lines, even if they're local, CSUB conferences, those are still great and still totally relevant. So you should include those as well. And then skills, you want to highlight any technical skills that you have. Computer learning, as I think we've all learned, especially in the last year, very, very important. So being proficient with a computer and various programs is really good, and people like to know about those things. If you're any computer programs, if you're proficient in Excel, proficient in Microsoft Word, if you know how to use R to analyze data, those are all really important things to list. If you have really great typing skills, include that. Programming skills are always great. You also want to highlight laboratory skills, things that you have learned in the lab, either while doing research or while in a classroom setting. You might have learned how to pipette, for example, or you might have learned how to conduct PCR, or you might have learned gram stains and streaking techniques in microbiology. All of those types of things are really important skills. And if you feel that you are proficient at them, doesn't mean you have to be an expert, but that you have good skill set, then you should list those. Also, other important things are languages. So if you speak other languages, that's always good. Also, any certifications that you have. And then just finally, a little bit about formatting. So generally you would list the sections in reverse chronological order. In other words, the most recent job that you've had goes first, and then the one that's furthest back in the past goes at the bottom, right? So reverse order. Be really concise with the wording. Again, it's meant to be a really brief glimpse at your education and career. So they're not asking for a giant novel about you, though I'm sure it would be very interesting. That's not, they want to be able to look at it and go through it very quickly. Make your CV easy to read. So you want it to look very organized and clear so that they can tell what things are in which section. They don't want to have to really fight through the CV. It should be really easy and streamlined. You want to be positive about yourself, but you also want to be accurate. Don't misrepresent yourself. Make sure that you give accurate information. And then also customize your CV for the position or the lab or the institution that you're interested in joining. So for example, I've mentioned if you're going into an ecology program, then you would want to highlight ecology courses. But if you were applying for a microbiology program, you would want to highlight maybe microbiology courses. Also, if you were applying, let's say for a job in particular, where you had more teaching responsibilities, you might put all of your teaching experience closer to the front and other things further back. The way in which your CV is ordered and also the formatting, it's very personal to each person. And you should definitely make it in the way that makes sense to you, but also keep in mind the program or the institution that you're applying for. I gave This is just a sample of my CV. The home address is my mailing address. It's not my actual house, so you can't find me there. I always put my professional address, and then at the top here, my education history in reverse order. So my Ph.D. was the last degree that I got, and then my BS was the first. Professional appointments that I've had, so my jobs that have actually been related to my current career are listed there. I don't include, at this time, I don't include any of the things that happened prior. So I don't include my retail experience, for example, because for the job I'm in as a professor, that's not relevant. That doesn't mean you shouldn't, once again, include that information. And then I have my publications underneath that. A couple of pages forward, this is what we see. And I have other research experience, which actually does go all the way back to my undergrad work here in Dr. Seek's lab. List of courses that I teach regularly, and then grants and scholarships that I've earned, awards and special recognition, continuing education. Those are just some examples of things that you can include on your CV. So before I go with cover letters, were there questions about the CV itself?
I have a question.
Yes.
Because hi, Dr. Stokes.
Hi.
I've been thinking about because I know a resume is different from a CV. A resume is usually shorter, and then a CV just includes basically everything that you've done. And I have quite the list. So I wanted to see if you have a template, or if there's where I could find a template that I could use as a sample to start.
If you Google CV templates, there's usually hundreds and hundreds that would come up. I personally didn't use a specific template other than I just kind of looked at other CVs to see how they were ordered and what they looked like and all of that. But also, once you develop your CV, if you wanted me or another professor to look at it, I'm sure people would be more than willing. I definitely would be more than willing to take a look at it, and I can help you if you needed to, rearrange things or whatever the case is. I had the opportunity when I was in graduate school to organize the CVs for all of the biology faculty in our department, like 30 CVs, and they're all very different, but it gave me ideas for what I liked best. So that's kind of what I did, was just look at a whole bunch of CVs.
Okay. And is there a specific order you could put stuff in? And
There's
obviously information, then education, where you are, and then just kind of go from there.
Yeah, I would start with education at the top, but then kind of beyond that, it's really up to you. Again, keeping in mind what program you're going into. So for example, if you're applying to a graduate school program, if you have publications already, you'll want to put those maybe up front, right? Really prominent at the front so that they know, oh, she's already published. That's very impressive. And if you haven't published, just put maybe the research experience that you do have up front and center. Again, saying hey, look, I've done, this research, even if it's just in your courses.
Thank you.
Yeah, was that helpful at all?
Yeah, it was, because I know I want to put one together before I graduate, because I'm going to start applying for master's and then med school.
Yeah.
Afterwards, so yeah.
Well, then we'll move on to discussing cover letters. First, again, we'll start with what a cover letter actually is. In short, your cover letter should do these things. You really want to tell the hiring committee or person whose lab you're applying to, in the case of graduate school, the admissions committee, that you're genuinely interested in the position. So you want to express that you have actually done your research about the lab that you're going into, even about the school and the program that you will be in if you are accepted to that program. Make sure that they know that you are serious and that you've actually put time into understanding this program, this lab, the school, all of those things. You want to highlight that you in particular will be a really good fit for that particular school. And then You want to highlight also what skills, knowledge, or interests will make you well suited. So what are the things about you that have really drawn you to that lab, right? That will make you a good fit and make you well suited for that particular institution. One quick thing before I move on also is that these are also things that you would want to include in a personal statement. So not all programs require a cover letter specifically. And so you could also kind of organize your personal statement in this way as well. So just some basics on formatting. If it's a cover letter, you really want to write it as a formal letter. So you want to include your address in the upper right corner. You want to put your phone number, your email address, website if you have one, all of that kind of information at the top. You can do that even for a personal statement just to make it really clear on how they would contact you as well. Address the reader. So if they've told you that you want to submit your materials to a specific person, you can use Ms., Mr., Mix, which is a gender neutral form of those words, doctor, if you know that they have a doctorate, or even just keep it kind of broad and state to whom it may concern in the case that you're not really sure who will be reading this or the potential that many people will be reading it. In your paragraphs, and it doesn't necessarily have to be 3 paragraphs, but again, you want to keep it kind of brief, so you don't want to carry on for too long. But you want to kind of have all of these things in there. So even if it's more paragraphs or maybe fewer paragraphs, you still want to include all of this information. So first you want to talk about what the actual job, lab, program, whatever that you're applying to is, and be really clear about your particular interests in those things. So what are your particular interests in that lab or program? Briefly explain the skills, knowledge, experience, etc., that you have that will actually make you an excellent candidate for this particular position. You are applying for a microbiology lab and you've taken 3 microbiology courses. You are very proficient at streaking plates. You know how to do a gram stain. You know how to do, list the tests that you know how to do, list the experience and skills that you actually have. And then you want to also discuss why you want to be in that particular lab or program. Really use this as an opportunity to demonstrate to the readers that you've done your research, that you have put in the time to understanding what type of research is actually done in that particular lab. You've took the time to understand the program that you're applying for, and also that you've kind of taken the time to understand the larger institution, the school itself. Lastly, you want to sign off. So thank them for their time and consideration. Offer to answer further questions if needed. And then you want to close your letter out professionally with something like sincerely, regards, etc., and then sign your name. Remember that with these letters, you're really selling yourself. So you want to use positive language about yourself. Don't highlight things that you're not aware of yet. When you're applying for graduate programs, nobody expects that you're going to know everything the moment you walk in the door. So don't feel like you have to know a bunch of things that you don't. Positive language, sound really confident, and include as many things as you can to show that you're actually really ready for this particular opportunity. I know a lot of students in particular have issues with kind of selling themselves. They feel like they don't have all of those particular things about themselves. Want to discuss imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome is very common. It is the fear of being found out. Most people, even many of your professors, I'll admit it, including myself, have had imposter syndrome or do have imposter syndrome. So you're not alone. Basically what imposter syndrome is demonstrated in this image. It feels like everyone else knows a lot and you just know a little tiny bit of what those other people know. But the reality is that you know some things and other people know other things. And there's definitely overlap in the middle, right? But nobody knows everything, essentially. Also, they've done a lot of work actually investigating how many people actually have imposter syndrome. So there was a recent study that found that an estimated 70% of the population suffer from imposter syndrome. This is a general feeling of not being good enough or smart enough for what you do. And that's from the article that's in this link here. And then in that article, they also shared this information comparing male and female astronomy graduate students and how they feel about imposter syndrome. You'll note that in both men and women, they just did a binary comparison, but in both men and women, people who said that they strongly agree or agree, saying that sometimes they're afraid, others will discover how much knowledge or ability they lack. Most of them in both categories agreed with that statement. It's also important to note that they found that imposter syndrome is also high, very high in specific minorities as well. The important thing is to realize that that's actually a normal feeling. You're not weird, very smart, and you are very prepared. You need to just be ready, be confident, ask your professors, ask me, come to me, ask me to read your CV, ask me to read your cover letter. I'm happy to help you, and I'm sure many of your other professors would be happy as well. Go chase your dreams. We came up with a couple of possible questions yesterday. One of them was, should you put your picture on your CV? And I think in general, I would kind of discourage people from doing that just because it opens the door for discrimination. There's of course always the chance that your name gives it away. Your name might give away your ethnicity, your name might give away your gender, those types of things. Having like a visual representation has sometimes proven to cause people to be discriminated against, and for all different reasons. Even things like they're overweight, that type of thing, you could be discriminated against. So I don't really encourage you to put your picture necessarily on your CV, but it is your CV. So if you want to, go for it. The difference between a CV and a resume, the CV is a little bit longer. You want to include all of the things that you've done that's related to your career. Mine has all of the presentations that I've given at conferences or even in other people's classes or at other institutions. It has all of the funding that I've gotten, grants, any scholarships, all of that kind of stuff. It has my full CV, even has some volunteer work that I've done. I include service, so service that I do at the university, but also service that I do within the community. You're including kind of everything. You want to be brief about all of those things, but include as much as you can.
Thank you very much, Dr. Stokes.
Thank you.